The 26th Amendment to the United States Constitution prohibits the states and the federal government from using age as a reason for denying the right to vote to citizens of the United States who are at least 18 years old. It was proposed by Congress on March 23, 1971, and 3/4 of the states ratified it by July 1, 1971. The drive to lower the voting age from 21 to 18 grew across the country during the 1960s and was driven in part by the military draft held during the Vietnam War. The draft conscripted young men between the ages of 18 and 21 into the United States Armed Forces, primarily the U.S. Army, to serve in or support military combat operations in Vietnam War. A common slogan of proponents of lowering the voting age was "old enough to fight, old enough to vote." In the 1970 case Oregon v. Mitchell, a divided U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Congress had the right to regulate the minimum age in federal elections, but not at the state and local level. Amid increasing support for a constitutional amendment, Congress passed the 26th Amendment in March 1971. The history of voting rights in the United States has been a long and complex one. Since America's founding days, when voting was limited to white male property owners, to the Transformative Voting Rights Act of 1965, to sweeping voting process reform introduced in the early 2000s, the right to vote in U.S. elections has seen massive change. The original U.S. Constitution left voting rights to the states for a range of reasons, including a compromise over slavery and the fact that the concept of setting up a representative democracy was new. In the 1820s, property qualifications for voting began to be eliminated, and amendments, including the 15th and 19th, granted the right to vote to black men and to women, respectively, although they didn't guarantee that right to all Americans. During the nearly century-long Jim Crow era, for example, intimidation, violence, literacy tests, poll taxes, grandfather clauses, and other tools were used to prevent voting for minority populations in the South. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 enfranchised Americans who had been barred from exercising their constitutional rights for more than a century. It put federal muscle behind voting rights and pushed back restrictions that had been used to prevent minority populations from voting. However, after the 2013 Shelby County v. Holder Supreme Court decision found Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act unconstitutional, states that had previously had to clear election changes through the federal government were free to make changes on their own. This led to new waves of state laws enacting voter ID requirements, closed polling stations, restrictions on vote by mail, and limited voting hours.